on the 15th of December, and we will call this meeting of the Kyle Housing Authority to order. Steve, do you want to handle roll?
Sure. Daniel?
Here.
Michelle?
Present.
David? Brad?
Present.
For the life of me, I can't think of her name.
Clara.
And she's out today.
Yeah, I know she's out, but technically you're supposed to say.
Yeah, Clara Rodriguez.
Clara, there you go, thank you.
All right, so we have a quorum. All right, so I guess first on the agenda is our routine public comment, limited to 3 minutes, and I see no one here for public comment. So we'll open public comment at 5:13, and we will close it at 5:14. All right. And then next on the agenda, on the posting, is executive session. I don't have anything personally in executive session, and I don't know if anybody else has a need to go into executive session. So with that, we will go to our long-awaited management report.
Well, here we go. Since we met last, a lot has happened, but we just keep running into one roadblock after another. For example, I wasn't aware that we had to be approved by USDA on peat dressing. I just assumed that once we were approved by HUD, that was all we needed to do, and then I made a call to the guy at USDA, and we finally talked a week or 10 days later, and he told me that, my company had to be approved by them. I said, well, all right. So he said, I'll send you the forms. Well, he sent me about 9 forms, which I've yet to complete. I'm working on them, but it's just a little bit of a roadblock. Nothing I can't take care of, it's just a timing thing. We did complete, after the last board meeting, we did complete the 100% unit inspection on peat dressing and all the buildings, and in a nutshell, I can tell you that they are in a lot worse condition than Charles Young is. I had 2 roofers and 2 paint contractors that I use go to both properties and do an analysis for me as to condition. Peat dressing still has the original roofs on them, so they're 42 years old. And they're essentially, their useful life is expired. One roofer told me that, he said, I can do about $7,000 worth of work on those roofs just to patch up what's leaking today, but I can't guarantee it'll last more than 3 or 4 months. He said, you really need to replace all those roofs. And that's going to run about between 120 and 130,000. Now, I've got a little summary of dollar amounts that I'll get to in a little while, but I just thought I'd mention that. And then the paint contractors told me that, and at Charles Young, on the roofs, for some reason, when they replaced those roofs over there 7 years ago, They didn't do one of the buildings. Don't know why. Nobody knows the answer to that. But there's one building that still has the older roofs on it. It doesn't leak, but it does need to be replaced. And then there's some minor repairs to some of the roofs, just on some vents and things that need to be done at Charles Young. That is, I've got a figure for that. It's like 2,800 and change. The exterior of the buildings at Charles Young are in pretty good shape. There is some carpentry work, minor, that needs to be done, that we can actually have our maintenance guy take care of. But then when you get to peat dressing on the exterior, the siding is masonite, and it is, you know, just pretty much worn out. The ideal recommendation from both companies that I had look at that said that, you know, what we really should do is re-side the whole place and get rid of all the masonite and go to hardy board or something similar to that, which is a long-lasting, good piece of material. We did determine that we could squeak by at peat dressing for probably another 5 years on the siding by making some repairs and then putting a coat of paint on everything, power wash it, re-caulk it all and put a coat of paint on it, and that would run about $33,000 to do both of those. But again, I have a list of numbers that I'll read off to you all in a minute. So those are the issues with the two properties with respect to the physical aspect on the outside. And then when we did the walkthrough on the inside of all the 30 units at peat dressing, we found about $36,000 worth of work that needs to be done on the insides. 16,000 of that is in the 10 vacant units. We've always been told there was 13 vacancies at Pete Dressing, but when we got into them, there's only 10. I don't know why. Oh. Nobody seems to know. You ask, and they say, oh, I thought there was 13. That was the answer I got. At any rate, now we know there's 10. And on those 10, there's some significant repairs that need to be made just to make them ready, and some appliance replacements and one thing or another, which I have a nice report done on a spreadsheet like this that details what each unit needs. Now, if you guys want to see copies of all this stuff, I'll be glad to send it to you. I didn't bring it. I didn't know if you wanted me to load you up with 5 pounds of paper or not, but I will be glad to email you a scan of my various reports and stuff tomorrow or Friday, so that you know you can have them. It's, you know, it's just so. In 10 units, there's about 16,000 worth of repair work just to make those units what HUD calls safe and sanitary. And then the other 20,000 is in the 20 occupied units. There's a lot of deferred maintenance inside of those. There's actually some that have holes in the walls, the exterior walls. And, you know, the people have put pictures over them and stuff like that. So that is my report on the condition of the buildings and the interiors at Pete Dressing.
So have you identified kind of funding sources or funding
Say that again?
funding opportunities?
Do I have any?
Or identified, or?
No. Well, I've identified $8,000 that we can get our hands on, which is 5% that's being held by Southwest Housing every month on Pete Dressen to, because they've never followed the EIV procedures. And so Letitia's just about done getting the EIV system all set up, and then I've had 3 meetings with people at Southwest Housing, and we're almost ready to let them know we've corrected all the EIV issues. And once we prove that to them, then they will release that $8,000. It's about $350 a month for the last 24 months, just round numbers, that they hold back, which is 5% of the rents that HUD pays.
All right.
But that's the only source of revenue that I have found so far. When I talked to the USDA guy, I suggested to him that what I wanted to do was prepare a budget-based rent increase and make it retroactive to December 1st, which is when that contract renewed for the rents. And he said he couldn't do that. He said when I got ready with my budget to reach out to him and we would discuss the possibility of doing it going forward, but not retroactive. So it'll probably be another 2 or 3 weeks before I'm in a position to go to him and ask him about that. Okay, and then we did,
So, one quick question on the
okay.
vacancies. So the 10 versus 13, from a financial standpoint, have we been vouchering for the right number of occupied units? Or
Yeah.
do we need to do a
No,
retro 5.9 to
no,
make up for the 3?
it's been being done correctly. It's just that the verbal report is that there's 13 vacancies there. That's
Okay.
what I've always been told since the beginning of time. Even as recently as about 3 weeks ago when I was talking to Frank,
Okay.
there was 13. And I think maybe what he had 13 in his mind on, this is just me speculating, is that he was probably combining both properties when he said there was 13, but he'd always told me there was 4 at Charles Young and 13 at Pete Dressen. We're working our way through the tenant files. I reported that to you last month, or last time we met, but since then we've gone through the Pete Dressen files, and they're just as bad or worse as the ones at Charles Young, so we're essentially rebuilding those from scratch one at a time. I may, in order to expedite that, send somebody up here to help Letitia work on that because it's very time consuming. And Michelle, I didn't introduce you. That's Letitia. She is our community director. She's been working at the property since we took over in September. And she's, she's got a big job. She's working on a lot of things at one time.
Steve, is there any, I don't know if there'd be any reason for us, or if we could, but I don't know if there's any volunteering or anything like that we might be able to do to help with the files and the rebuilding? Or are there too many issues with confidentiality that wouldn't allow that?
There's too much confidentiality, and somebody's got to know
Okay,
what they're doing in order to, build all the documents that are required by HUD
okay, all right,
or public housing, whichever property it is.
okay.
So, it's not like I can just get a volunteer. I might find some benevolent person in my company that would volunteer to go work with her for a couple days.
All right.
But
I'm
that-
happy to
that-
provide
That would put a little
lunch
dent in a
those
big
days.
project, but, you know.
Well, I'm happy to provide lunch for those days. So if somebody would like to come down, then we'll get them a really good deal on that.
Okay. It's now been 3 months and today's the 15th, 7 days since Daniel and I went to Wells Fargo to open up the bank accounts. And I can tell you that they're still not open. In fact, I just got an email this afternoon. I sent our most recent person from Wells Fargo an email last night and said, what's the status on the bank accounts? And she emailed me back at about 5 o'clock or 4:30 today and said, and I'll read it to you. I reached out to the relationship manager who was establishing the account to try and get more information for you. I will let you know when I hear back. I mean, it's just, it's a
Ridiculous.
joke.
Yeah.
When I was there 2 weeks ago yesterday and talked to her, she told me that she was gonna file complaints on our behalf because of the time it's taken to do all that. And she assured me that within 7 work days, she'd have all these accounts opened up and they would appear on my online banking for Wells Fargo. I check every day and it's not there. And then the paperwork that they originally had both of us sign was done wrong. And so we both had to go back in there 2 weeks ago and re-sign that same paperwork. They had put the name of the entity incorrectly on the forms, so they had to redo them all. But that's been a real roadblock for us, is not being able to get that done. ELOCs, which is where we get our money for Charles Young from Public Housing. We just got approved, I just got approved to be able to draw money on that last Friday, so that took over 3 months also. I've been working with Brenner Stiles on that since the very beginning of September. And actually, when they got it set up last Friday, what happened was I'm set up as a coordinator in the HUD secure system. When they put me in for ELOCs, they put me in as a user, which took away all of my coordinator abilities. And so she finally emailed me today and said they finally have fixed that. But I went in, right before I came up here, I went in and looked, and there's still some of my properties are not listed in. It's still more work I gotta do on that. But at any rate, I at least have the ability to go into ELOCs and draw money down for Charles Young. But that should have never taken 3 months. Everything seems to have taken 3 months. I don't know why. I've had about 7 or 8 virtual meetings with Brenner and just on that one issue. And it just seems like there's always some kind of roadblock. Let's see. This is kind of my diary, and so every time I go in here and add something, I do it in a different color. A minor thing, but nonetheless, pest control is a joke. Unit interiors are only treated when residents complain, and then not always responded to. During our unit walkthroughs, we saw evidence of roaches in many of the units, both occupied and vacant. Obviously, the plan in place was not working. I found out how much has been being paid to the company that only treats the outside of the buildings except when there's a complaint from a resident, and the amount of money that's being paid to them, I set up with my pest control guy to go in and do every unit and also treat all the exteriors of the buildings for about the same amount of money. And so we're already started on that, done all the units.
The first time was the 29th.
Okay.
They didn't send it.
So he'll be coming out there every month, just working on getting rid of all of the pest issues we've had. I already mentioned EIV money that's being held by Southwest Housing at $7,676. And as soon as we get all that EIV finalized and get it to them, they'll release that money into the Pete Dressen operating account. There is an issue with money because we don't have bank accounts. I've been fronting all the payroll and operating expenses from our side, management fees for October, November, and now December. And that totals about $38,000. Now, once I get the bank accounts open and move the money, then I'll be able to pay myself all that. But right at this stage, I've been fronting that for the last 3 months. Normally, that wouldn't be the case, but because I'd get a bank account open right away. Okay, I told you
So
about
the, so the
US
bank account, where's it sit now?
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, so it's a,
We have
It's
the
not-
old,
it's-
we have the old Wells Fargo accounts.
Right.
with
And
Frank,
S- And Steve, yeah, with Frank and I,
uh-huh,
and then Steve wanted to open up new, fresh accounts. And we've
This
been on,
starts-
we've been on that project for
3
months,
It's 3 months.
3.5 months.
so.
And that's common, when you take over a property, you open new bank accounts, you don't,
yeah.
you know, pick up where. That way you got a clean audit trail from day one, from time we're managing it. Okay, let's see, I was just, a week ago today, I was contacted by a REAC inspector who's gonna do a REAC inspection on Pete Dressen on January. He originally set it up for January 3rd. And then, when I read his email, and I put it up on our bulletin board, I said, whoa, that's our New Year's Day holiday. So I emailed him back and said, you know, we don't work that day. And so he changed it to January 6th, but they will be there in, 3 weeks or 4 weeks to do the REAC inspection. And I'm quite sure we're not gonna get enough done to really make a dent. But we may. We'll get some done, I just don't know how much. We're only working one guy because I'm not trying not to spend a whole lot of money. I'm having, and he's staying busy doing repair work. He did make ready the units over in Charles Young, and we've got two of those left to occupy. One of them she'll occupy next week, and then the other one probably the week after that. But he has spent a lot of his time in the last 6 weeks doing repair work and peat dressing in the occupied units, heaters, air conditioning, just different stuff that needs to be taken care of. Now that they've figured out that somebody will actually respond to their service requests, we get a lot of calls.
And then he's doing some kind of time and effort so we can split them between the two, or are we just
We
gonna
keep our time split up between each property. If he works, he's working 4-day week, 10 hours a day. And if he works 6 hours today at dressing and 4 at Charles, that's how his time sheet will be done.
Cool.
He actually clocks in and out whenever, depending upon where he goes from one job to the next.
Who's doing lawn care now? Do you have in-house or?
We actually haven't done the lawn care in about a month. That guy named David, he does the lawn care. And he is Frank's son-in-law. We haven't dealt with that because at this time of the year, you don't have to do it frequently enough to worry about it, but.
Yeah, and I probably won't have my memory right, but I thought Frank was telling us when they did those REACT inspection, one of the things we got written up for was having tree branches touching a roof and like things that are easy to
Yes.
fix that just kill your score, but I can't speak articulately to any of that kind of stuff.
I'll have to go back and look at our punch list that we made up and see if that was written up, but if there is any of that, we can get that fixed. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's all the other stuff that's gonna be the big deal as far as the score goes.
Are we still using Erlob for accounting?
Yes, at this
Okay.
point, we still are because without bank accounts, we're not doing any of the accounting.
Yeah.
We're doing it out of the office and sending it to Erla. Once I get the bank accounts, then we'll set that up now, which brings a question that the lady that runs my accounting department told me to ask you. The way Orloff does it, he does a separate one. He does one report and it's split up into 3 things: young, dressing, total. Is that the way you want it? Or,
Is there a recommendation that you have that would be helpful? Or you think is a more
Well-
helpful way?
we can do it either way, you know. Gloria just wanted to make sure that that's how you wanted it, as opposed to how it's been being done for however long.
So I get I understand why you'd present it as this is Pete Dress and this is Charles Young because they're different animals, right?
Right.
I never understood why we had a total because these two work in isolation, right?
Exactly.
Because you can't, you know.
You
so
can't,
It's
you
two
can't
different
commingle the money,
sources.
so there's really no reason to have the total.
Yeah, so I would think
Just do
Just do the
the
two
two separately,
separately.
and
would make sense to
we're
me.
having separate bank accounts, and so it would be all a good, clean audit trail.
Yes.
The audit is done combined, but it still can be even without that total count.
Yeah.
The audit's done separately and they do the combined, but that's a different animal.
Yeah. Can I circle back to the make-ready conversation?
Sure.
So we have 10 vacant units at Pete Dress and then we have a couple at Charles Young.
Right.
And then do you know kind of when you think we're gonna have those made ready and rented, just generally speaking?
Well, I can get, the ones at Charles Young, we're just about ready to have those rented. We've already occupied 2 of them.
So that's from 10 to 8? 10 to 8, we went down, that's the 2, right?
Right.
We were at 10, now we're at 8?
No, Pete Dressing's
No,
at 10.
that's 10.
Okay, sorry.
And so, the thing, you know, with Pete Dressen, we had to, you know, first identify what all the needs were and what the dollar amount was, because Pete Dressen's the one that has no money.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, you know, what I'm leading up to with, as far as money goes is, you know, you asked me, do I have any sources? I have one, that I can get $8,000 from Pete Dressen, but I need another $10,000 just to get those units ready.
And then that's when we're gonna approach the discussion on rate adjustments, right?
Well, no, I need cash money in order to do that, and I'm thinking, you know, in my mind, the city would be the first source of money. The city of Kyle, in order to help the property out.
Yeah, I've always thought that that the city's role is just to appoint board members. I didn't think the city had the ability to give us or loan us money, would they? But
They could. They could loan you money.
Choose to.
Because,
They want to.
like acting as a bank.
well, acting as the developer of this entity, and, you know, I mean, technically, they own this entity. The Housing Authority of the City of Kyle is owned by, it's an entity owned by the City of Kyle.
It's like an interlocal agreement, isn't it? It's like a, see, I really don't understand how that works either, because the
That's-
mayor's in charge of
Appoint them.
selecting the board, which in my mind always says, okay, well, then the city government has some responsibility
Right.
from a high level, not from a financial perspective, I don't think.
From a governance and accountability.
So I think, because it's an interlocal agreement, right? Isn't that what they're referred to?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I think they're interlocal agreements where the housing authority exists under the city as an entity, but no tax money financial part.
We can go back to the city attorney, but when we've had conversations in the past, like we asked if the utility company could go fix that water leak. And they said we can only go up to the curb, and anything past the curb belongs to the housing authority, and that we're on our own. And then when we were looking for legal resources, they pointed us to a firm, but we had to pay that out of our own. So I've never been under the impression that the city has any financial connection to our authority. But we can talk to the city attorney and ask them.
I think that would be the thing to do, because this, you know, I don't know where else the entity would get any money.
Can they go to Wells Fargo and go get a business
You mean
loan?
Like a loan?
Yeah, a business loan?
Well, somebody'd have to sign for that. You willing to sign for it?
Sign on behalf of, as the chairman. I mean, I'm not putting my social security number on it, but I'll let Brad do that.
Thanks. We'll call Travis.
Yeah.
That's why, why I think it goes back to the city's the one who developed this thing in the first place. They created the entity. If you go back and look at those documents that I sent you a while back, from back in 1976, that was all done, through the city.
So is there original HAP, do you recall, for the property?
Well, there's some other documents that I found in a file. I mean, they've been there forever. They were yellow. And so I took them to my office and scanned them all and sent them to Daniel.
Yeah, so you should have your,
But I think,
how I've seen other small housing authorities through rural development has been the original HAP tied to an interlocal government entity agreement. But I've never really understand what that really means. Like,
be quite honest with you, I don't totally understand it myself, because this is my first involvement with the housing authority. But
Well, I'll ask, I'll email the city
I
attorney
mean,
and
the
ask
worst
him.
thing they can say is, you know, we're not gonna give you a dime. I will tell you, you know, that that's the problem is that, you know, Pete Dresden doesn't have any money to pay for anything, and so we know what needs to be done in those units.
Who's our government contact on Pete Dresden? Is that,
At HUD,
I guess, whoever,
Darlene Hines.
so
And-
maybe we email Hines and ask her what options we have, cause I assumed that we'd go you rent adjustments, then rent adjustments would bring in money every month that you could use to start addressing some of these things, but.
But we still gotta have the money to get those units ready in order to occupy them. That's, you know, that's not gonna come from rent adjustments going forward. That's something we gotta have, you know, today in order to blitz those units and get them all done.
Can I?
And then get them
add
all
something?
occupied.
I work for Travis County, and in Travis County, we had a situation with one of the Travis County, or the Travis County Housing Authority properties, and we are using some of the ARPA funds to help them defray some of the costs for renovating and remediating some of the issues that are at one of the properties, the housing authority properties. I think we set aside about $1 million to do that.
What kind of funds did you call it?
The ARPA, the
American
Americans
Recovery.
Recovery Act,
Oh, okay.
and there might be an opportunity here to do something like that if the city of Kyle hadn't already expended all of their money, or, I don't know.
Well, it's definitely worth a conversation going back. I don't think we've had, from previous conversations, I haven't walked away with an impression that there's been a desire to walk down that road with city funds, because we've also talked about, okay, maybe we can do this, but as all of us know, we recognize Pete Dresden, we don't know where we're getting money, because we just can't grow it on trees. I wish I had money seeds, but I don't.
Because like, where I'm sitting now, it's like, you know, the chances of passing a REACT is slim. It's probably slim to none.
Oh, yeah.
And so, do we make, what's the best return on investment? Now, you don't ever wanna say don't make repairs in an occupied unit, but I would say spend the money and get the unoccupied units back online, so we're collecting rent. So where's the best place for money?
Well, that would be the best place, the place to focus on is getting those 10 units done so that we can in turn start getting rent collected on them.
Well, worst case scenario in this thing is that, you know, our tenants would be misplaced or displaced, and then you've gotta figure out where they're gonna go after that. We need to, I think that it would not be a stretch to ask the city if they could at least fund renovations to these properties.
And like I say, the worst thing they can say is no. And we do have $25,000, I believe it is, in the reserve for replacement account, which that in itself, however, is under the minimum requirement that HUD has of $1,000 a unit. We could petition HUD to allow us to use that money in order to get these units brought.
Yeah, so I say we should
I think we
send
should try that.
Darlene an email and ask her, you know, this is our predicament. What do they recommend, or what options do we have to consider? So,
I can do that. In fact, a little further into my report, I made the comment, is, you know, since September 30th, when I talked to Darlene and she said, we've approved you, I've not heard one word from her since. But
So,
typical.
so Steve, so I
That is
understand.
typical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, this is gonna be the second failed REAC,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So technically, we haven't had our reinspection because of COVID, really. So now we're getting our reinspection that should have happened within 6 months of the last one.
Right.
And HUD already knows, based on non-response or other, that a lot of those issues haven't been addressed. And so I think it plays in our court with the second failed REAC and the letters that are gonna come from that, and the demands that, hey, we're more than willing to get our units and property in shape and order, but we need funds. And, you know, maybe we don't ask for half of, or all of it, we ask for half, or whatever number we think we need from that reserve, with an agreement that we'll put the appropriate funds back in once the rents are increased and we're back.
Before asking for
Right.
any money out of it again, yeah.
Correct.
So Steve, for Pete Dresden, when I was writing down the figures, it sounds like we need about 130 for the roofs. We have 36,000, so that's the exterior, and 36,000 needed for the interior, but also maybe 33,000 at least to patch up the exterior masonite. So we're looking at close to $200,000 just to sort of get us where we need to be on some level.
$214,543.81.
Okay,
And that's the,
okay.
and do we feel the roofs are past an insurance claim? Think it just depreciate out to zero?
Well, yeah, file an insurance claim on Pete Dresden would be a waste of time, because you won't get a penny. Because they're, of their age, they'll depreciate them 100%.
Yeah.
So the itemized, the total is 214,000. That's for both properties.
Okay,
Wait a minute, no, that's not, I'm sorry.
and you had,
That is not for both properties.
yeah, I don't know if I have a Charles Young,
The breakdown on Charles Young is roof repairs is 2467. Building 409/411, the new roof for it is $10,060.88. And then expenses that we've incurred that we haven't been paid back for is $23,888.65. That's a total of $36,416.53. And then on Pete Dresden, make ready of the vacant units is $16,573. Repairs to the interiors of the occupied units is $20,353. Roof replacements is $130,000. Exterior carpentry and painting is $33,330. And then expenses incurred for payroll and related by my company is $14,287.81. That's $214,543.81. So the total is like $251,000. Now, one of the things I did not mention is that, and I'll send you this report so you'll have all those numbers and itemization of it. One thing I didn't mention yet is that when I talked to the USDA guy, he told me that they were talking about the prospect of foreclosing on Pete Dresden because it was in such poor condition. And nothing had been done to it for 2 years since all the bad inspections. And so I told him, I said, well, you know, that's why they hired me to come in and clean it up, fix it up, and get it turned around. And he said, well, you know, he was not committal to that, you know, we'll see. And that was about it. But it's, the Pete Dresden property is just really rough shape. Now, one other thing Ronald Erlob told me when I talked to him is that a lot of his clients have been just giving back USDA properties because they never have enough money to operate them properly. And so they're out of frustration and a lack of money, they've just turned the properties back to HUD and said, you can have them.
Yeah, yeah. But that's a kind of a discussion for another day, but.
Yeah.
And see, that's why I don't know where the city comes in on stuff like that. Like, yeah, I don't know how that would affect the city, or what kind of red flags the city would get on, one, you hand over the keys and just walk away, or two, even what does a foreclosure look on the city, even though in HUD terms, a foreclosure would take 2-3 years to probably process all the way through. I mean, that's not a quick process either.
Right.
Well, and
So,
I'll just share, Brad, that we have had these conversations and shared what the possibilities are, and that we were trying to determine how we can create this, but the city is aware that there are funding issues, and that because of Pete Dresden's, the way that it is put together with USDA, that there isn't any money given to refurbish. We do have that for Charles Young, but they are aware, and we have shared that with them when Daniel and I have met.
Now, I talked to a guy this morning. Is there anything else you want to talk about with respect to what the money needs are? I think what I'll do is I'll shoot Darlene Hines an email either tomorrow or Friday and copy y'all and say, you know, after 60 days or 45 days of assessing Pete Dresden, you know, we've got some real needs, and, you know, one of the ways to solve the issues is we gotta have some money. So do you think you could release some of our RFR money in order to get these units ready? But one of the other things that, and I still think a conversation with the city attorney or whoever with regard to the city funding some money to help the property out. And it could be done in the form of a loan, added to the balance sheet as a payable to the city of Kyle. You know, set it up on a note and, you know, 5 years, you know, 5% interest or, you know, whatever. I think that's another route to consider. And like I said, the worst thing that could happen is they say no. But there's also the possibility that, you know, they'd be willing to do that in order to keep these units, get them back in good condition and keep providing, you know, housing these 50 people or 51 people. We've got 300 applications sitting in the office. People who want to live here. Some of them are pretty old, but nonetheless. Moving on to a different subject. I talked to a guy this morning whose name is Cotton. Oh, God, he sent me an email. Let me see if it's in the back of this.
What's it pertaining to?
Franconia Claims. Have y'all ever heard of that? Let me give you a little history. Before 1979, owners utilizing Farmers Home Advance or Farmers Home Administration loan programs had the option to prepay their promissory notes at any time. After 79 and before December 15th of 89, those who had entered into loan agreements were eligible to prepay after 20 years. In '88, Congress passed the Emergency Low-Income Housing Preservation Act. And although it was designed,
So is this about refinancing? Is that the
no, it's
general gist?
actually, it's about being able to go file a claim to get money back, a considerable amount of money back. He says in his letter, he sent me this on an email, just,
Probably, I mean, I think it's probably worth researching, but, I mean, we probably need to know if it's actually viable before we can really have a discussion about it, I think.
all right. I'll send you all a copy of all this
Okay,
Well,
tomorrow.
just don't send it to everybody, because do we have to
Yeah.
post that?
probably, yeah, just,
So, I don't think you can
Okay.
send it to everybody without
Just
us
then it's
making it a
not a
public
meeting.
document,
right.
Okay,
so.
so who should I send it to?
You can send it to me and I'll check it out.
All right. I'll do that. So in closing, we've run up against so many obstacles over the past 90 days, I feel we've made little progress. However, things are doing better. We just need to keep plugging away and get all these little obstacles taken care of and work out our details with Southwest Housing, which we're very close to finalizing that. And then the USDA guy. And it's just gonna, as I told y'all in the beginning, it was gonna take a year and a half to get this thing done. And I'm leaning, we're 3 months into it already, so I'm leaning more to a year and a half than I have a year.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's good that we've got I feel like you've got a pretty good feel of the physical infrastructure, and then from there, it's developing a plan, a financing plan to address that. And then I mean, to me, the real issue is gonna be getting our vacancies down to essentially zero, and then having the appropriate market rent. And
Well, and all I could
I'm
do,
optimistic.
well, I am too, it's just gonna take longer. All I could do as far as market rents go was do an OCAF, which can stay with the existing market rents with a slight increase for a cost of living. And the reason for that is that when I got involved on Pete Dresden, it was October 1st, and it was impossible for me to put together anything and get it. It was due to
Yeah.
Southwest Housing on August 1st.
Yeah, but we'll have
So
we have this year coming up.
we'll do it.
So,
The OCAF went into effect the 1st of December, and, we'll work on it again for next year and do something completely different. And I may still be able to talk that USDA guy into, letting me do a partial increase on the budget-based rent increase. We'll
Yeah.
just have to see.
And that's a problem, rural housing just isn't, they just don't, I don't feel like they're there to help us. HUD doesn't care, HUD will approve that rent adjustment and carry on, but then rural development has the ability to stop it, and at the end of the day, it's not rural development's money, it's HUD's money, so I don't know why they play that big dog fight in it. It doesn't make any sense.
And I don't know either. It's like they butt heads against each other.
Yeah.
On the other side of the coin, just an FYI, I got an email from Brenner Stiles at Public Housing Friday, and she said, just so you know, my boss thinks y'all are doing a great job trying to get everything turned around over there at Charles Young, and he's singing your praises. So for
That's
whatever,
good.
Well, that's nice to hear.
for whatever that's worth.
Good.
So from a SHEC standpoint, the MOR, on the number of findings that are still open, do you think you're in a position to start responding to close those
Yeah.
outside the EIV?
Yeah, most of them, I've already responded to some of them.
Okay.
And as Letitia works through the tenant files, then, that will clear up the rest. And I figured by the end of the year or the middle of January, we should be able to get that done.
Okay. I just know if we start pushing on Darlene about releasing money, if we can show the good faith on SHCC side, then we'll have SHCC support
Well, and I
there
think,
as well.
I've been working with Danzy on that, and she's been real helpful, and what Letitia's doing and a couple other people that I have involved in it on a daily basis, a couple of regional directors, they're all working closely with Danzy to make sure we get everything the way it's supposed to.
Okay, perfect.
And that's all I've got for y'all. Not really a great report, but nonetheless, it's, where we're at today.
When do you think we'll get our next finance update from Erlob?
I forgot to attach that to the stuff I gave you today. I meant to print it out and attach it to the minutes and the agenda, and I forgot.
Okay.
I'll send you, I've got October's, I'll send that to you tomorrow.
So, yeah, so I think maybe even for the next time we meet, let's go ahead and add, because we didn't have the minutes on our agenda to approve, so we can add September, today's, and the financial audit,
Okay.
and we'll do that.
Perfect. Well, any other questions or comments from the group?
I'll just share, thank you, Steve. I know you knew that there was gonna be a lot, as we all know, having been on the commission for a few years now. So we thank you for being tenacious. Thank you, Letitia, for being here as well. We don't have this type of knowledge, other than Brad, who is much more intimate, and then David has a little bit of it from the county, but I think we want to support you in what you're doing and be able to help us get to a place where we're not scrambling and we're not having to look for funding, all of those things, and that's down the road. But just know that we want to support, and if there are ways we can, and I'm very serious. So if you have some volunteers who end up coming to help Letitia, tell me. I will provide something that day so that they don't have to worry about lunch, or something that we could do to really express gratitude. I'm happy to do that, and to support that.
Thank you.
Well, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right. All right. Any objection? Hearing none, we will adjourn, and it is 6:11 p.m. And we'll get our next meeting on the calendar at some point. Thanks all.
Thank you, guys.